Welcome back to Mothers of All Crime. We're here talking part 3, Gabby Petito, the aftermath.
Yes. So we've gone through obviously Gabby and Brian's relationship, the things leading up to both of their disappearance, the discovery of Gabby's body, discover Brian's body, and the investigation that went through that, coming to the conclusion that Brian had basically murdered his girlfriend, which,
Or fiance.
well, yes, fiance. According to Brian, fiance. But afterwards, there's been a lot of interesting kind of developments, even
hmm
after both of it. Pretty much the case is over, but there seems to be a lot of talk about, is it really over?
Yes, that's true because of several reasons. There are additional people other than Brian that could have potentially been charged with things or been held accountable in other ways. And then there's a lot of conspiracy theories about Brian himself. So, and also Gabby's parents have been very busy since this happened
Mhm.
and have accomplished a lot.
Yeah. There's good things, there's weird things. Which one do you want to start with?
Do you want to tell me about some good things? Start us off on a positive.
Sure, let's go with the positive. So, Gabby Petito's family has really taken a really awful situation and tried to make the best of it for other people. The main one that they did is they started the Gabby Petito Foundation, which is a beautifully done website to start. And it provides someone with resources, education, all kinds of different stuff. There's fundraising that helps for domestic violence and understanding. But also, one thing that I really liked about it is on this site, there's a button that if you're on there and you are in one of these circumstances, every single page you click on at the bottom, there's an exit site button. And if you hit that, it instantly will bring you into just Amazon and Google.
Oh,
So
that's great.
if you're in a circumstance that is unsafe and you're trying to get these resources, and in order so you don't have to get caught or have the repercussions
hmm
of that, they made it so that it's very safe to be on the site, which I appreciate a lot. I thought that was really smart.
That makes total
And
sense.
I love that. So they have been doing that, which I think is amazing. And they truly kind of keep with that works. So from there, they've also stepped into legislation.
hmm
So, as we have talked about during this investigation, there were a lot of different departments that were involved, both federal and state. So, the Petito family has taken it upon themselves to actually work with legislators and researchers to help put in bills and legislation to better protect victims of domestic violence. They have been successful in Florida and Utah. And one thing that I may have said this before, but I truly believe that the best types of policies, bills, legislation should be backed up by research. Scholarly
hmm
research that has had evidence, data to support whatever you're implicating. Because without that, you're kind of just shooting in the dark. So, what they've done is they've taken research from Jacqueline Campbell and they've coupled that with their legislation. So, for the Florida bill that got placed, it requires police departments to consult different entities for policies, procedures, and trainings to implement them so that they understand these domestic violence actions. And in Utah, they successfully passed this in 2023, both states. It requires police departments to have a lengthy conversation with 12 different questions with people who are suspected to be victims of DV. And they will have then referrals for providers and shelters. And they've actually seen this really improve people coming to the police and asking for help. Utah got granted $30 million to increase their services to provide to domestic violence victims, which makes it so that this program and this law can actually be implicated in the right way. Because just because you have this law in books and these questions, that's great. If you can't help them, it doesn't matter.
Right.
So they were actually able to get the funds as well to support all of these new referrals and shelters and stuff. So which is fantastic.
It's really incredible. I think that these are actually really smart ways that can actually improve the situation for people that are like Gabby. And maybe this is actually, it's probably already saving lives.
Mhm.
And it's just a lovely way to honor her life. And I also think it's so important that we are, especially to the police, providing education about domestic violence. That's not something, I don't think, that's extensively covered in the police academy. And especially for older cops that, I mean, I'm sure it wasn't.
Well,
And so
it's
it's
not
not fair to expect them to
necessarily
know.
educating the police. It's getting people educated about you're in a situation that is qualifies as domestic violence,
Mm,
because here's like the police are trained to recognize the situations, but if you don't recognize you're in it, it doesn't matter. So I think like a lot of this is, all right, great, let me give you the resources to read and learn, and you make the
mhm.
decision if you're going to do something. Because kind of like with what we saw with Gabby and Brian, you can suspect it, you can separate them, but if they don't believe it, they're going to go right back. And we saw Gabby that same night, even though she was told to not contact Brian, she went right back later that night and they left together. So I think giving
And that is
them,
so, so common.
yeah, it's extremely common. So giving victims those resources of like, hey, let me validate what you're feeling and explain to you it's going to be okay. There's options to move on. Like, how can I help you? You're not alone. I think that's really where those funds or those resources are coming from.
Makes total sense. Because it's, I mean, people are going, it's going to take multiple times for a lot of victims to leave. And I
Yeah.
think that helping someone recognize that they're in an unsafe situation that will likely escalate is really probably the best they could do. Because you're right, physically separating couples does not solve the problem necessarily, because that's temporary. And you
Yeah.
can't control what people are going to do, and you can't just keep them in jail indefinitely before they've done something so serious that cannot be undone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think that, yeah, I just,
Yeah.
wow.
And a lot of states already had these kind of questions in place. But unfortunately and oddly, these two didn't, which is kind of unfortunate that these were the states that they happen to fall into. Um, but when I was reading through these 12 specific questions that got passed, uh, and as a result, they would then give the victim, they're like, hey, here are the results of this assessment. Here's the situation you're in. Here's the nearest domestic violence shelter if you're interested. Um, and it is interesting the questions though. So particularly if you don't have education on what the abuser looks like from the outside, some of these might not necessarily put, hey, like there could be violence, but then some of them I feel like are very obvious that police may have already been asking, but not necessarily in an assessment context. For
Hmm.
example, one of them is the aggressor unemployed?
Wow.
Versus you also have to the extreme of, do you believe the aggressor would try and kill you at some point? So you have this wide range of questions that's really getting into a bunch of different types of assessing. You have, has the aggressor ever attempted suicide? So they're looking into their own, like, let's look at that person. How unstable are they? And what about, have you ever been followed or spied on? Do you feel like they've ever sent you threatening messages? So it's really taking
Mm,
your experience there and then the aggressor's life circumstance and kind of molding it into 12 short questions that I think they were curated really well. But again, it's supported with research that had been conducted that I'll say it over and over again. The best policies are supported by research. So I think the Petito family went really well into taking this step into legislation.
definitely. And I think that financial abuse in a lot of circumstances is not looked at the same as physical or even emotional abuse.
Oh,
It's
absolutely not.
almost like this is a separate issue that's not abuse. But I think
Mm-hmm.
if you look at a lot of these domestic violence situations that become homicides or assaults or really serious crimes like that, there is a huge element of financial abuse. And we saw in the documentary Brian financially abusing Gabby while she was alive and after she was dead. And it's it- I don't know if it would have necessarily changed her perspective on him, but I do think it's important to be able to objectively evaluate who you're with and the situation that you're in, and it's hard to see it from the inside.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you take, like, if there's not that money fixes problems, because sometimes money creates problems, but if you are if you don't have a stream of income, that's another stressor. And if they're already
Mhm.
aggressive, having that easy stressor of something like that too, particularly for someone who's like looking for work. Brian wasn't looking for work, but could be really frustrating if you're like trying, can't find a job. You're going to take out your anger somewhere else. So I think they did a really nice job, and from what I've seen, granted it only passed, I don't know, like 8-9 months ago. It has
Mhm.
had an increase in people reaching out and getting those services. So it seems so far that they are taking advantage, and it's starting to really help people.
Yeah, I think that's incredible. It always amazes me when people make something good out of something so awful, and I don't know if I would have the strength to pursue these legislature changes the way that they have, but I mean, her four parents have really really impressed me through all of this.
They're like the model of co-parenting. Like, I feel like
Yeah.
they really have, and I agree with you. I don't know how I would respond, but I also think some people need the distraction,
Mhm.
and throwing yourself into something so aggressive so quick could have been a way to kind of distract themselves. So
Right.
I think it actually could be healing. Like, hey, like this awful thing happened, but Gabby would be so proud of us. Look what we've done to help other people. Because it seemed like Gabby was just a
Yeah.
really caring person and was there for her friends and wanted to help people and just very kind. So I think they feel proud that they're like making Gabby proud, and her memory is going to live forever as like this positive change that has happened to save other people.
Yes. And of course, Brian's death also eliminated a murder trial. So, something that would have, had he been charged and prosecuted and all of that, I mean, that would have taken months to years and would
Yeah.
have been a huge um, time suck and an emotional roller coaster, I'm sure. And the appeals that maybe would have happened. So, I think because he wasn't alive and criminal charges were not pursued prior to
Mhm.
his death, I mean, it's like this huge thing has happened, rocked our family, rocked a nation, rocked the world pretty much. People all over the world were interested in this. And I think when they had such a platform and they didn't have something like a trial to focus on, they just saw this opportunity and they took it. And I think that they've been, yeah, role models is a good word. Even in all of their interviews on Dr. Phil, the recent one on 2020, like they just seem like such a great united front.
Yeah.
And they even all have matching tattoos now to match Gabby.
Yeah. Which is, yeah, like
That's
I said,
beautiful.
I think they've handled it the best they possibly could considering the
Yeah.
circumstance, for sure.
I'm sure the day to day was horrible,
Oh, I
but
can't even imagine. And they're going to have their
yeah,
moments. And
for sure.
I hope they continue to heal and find power in what they're doing, and I think Gabby would be really proud of them for someone who never knew
Yeah.
her.
Yeah, I know. I feel like we're assuming a lot about Gabby, but I do feel like through them, we all got to know her. And there's so much footage and so much of her own writing that, and her art, and just there's so many different ways that you can absorb her that I feel like, I don't know, she has left an impact.
Yeah, 100%. And in addition to that, though, there was a civil suit, a wrongful death suit
Mm.
that the family put out. And this is where media gets tough because we obviously can only we're not going to know what we have not read the documents. We don't have access to their accounts. We don't know them personally. And there is a lot of conflicting information on this one. So I don't know what you've
Mhm.
seen, but I have seen anything from they filed it originally for $50 million, that they received $3 million. I've seen that they got the money, that they haven't got the money. It's very conflicting when it comes to this
So
suit.
on 2020, they the program stated that the family was awarded $3 million from the estate of Brian Laundrie. But I saw in the days that followed Gabby's father make a TikTok post saying that they did not get the money because Brian didn't have any money. And I looked up specifically to see if his parents had to, I was like, oh, well, maybe their house was taken as collateral, maybe their assets were seized, maybe they were somehow financially responsible for it, but they were not.
Yeah. And then
So I think they did not get any money. There was
which
a $3 million like it was awarded, but
but
you
it's
can't get the money because there is no money.
and also he's dead. Like you can't collect money from a dead
Right.
person who didn't
Well,
have
you
anything
can
to
if they
begin
have
with.
if you have an estate,
Right.
like if you have a house and a car and a bank account with money in it and you die and someone sues your estate, like all of those assets can be seized. But I mean, he had $700 that he stole from Gabby after he killed her. So there was no money, there was no car, there was no property. I doubt there was a bank account with any money in it.
Or
So
anything
they probably got like
significant.
$300.
Yeah.
And you're right, because he's dead, it's not like they can garnish his wages forever. So there are no wages and his parents are not responsible for it because he was an adult.
Yeah.
If he was a minor, it would be different. They would be
Right.
held liable for his actions, but they're not.
Right. And
Yeah.
then there was another civil suit that her family filed against the Moab Police Department, which, if people remember, was when Gabby and Brian were pulled over for a phone call coming in, and this is when they got separated and told to spend the night separately, yada yada yada.
Mhm. Mhm.
That was dismissed by the judge, just claiming that it was a lot of speculation, that in knowing what we know now, the judge basically was like, it they did what they could. There's no proof that this led to what happened, but there's also no proof that it
Mhm.
didn't. So the judge was like, I can't make a decision on something that is unfortunately subjective. So that got fully dismissed, um, which I think reinforced the civil suit against Brian, in my opinion. Because if you
Mhm.
have that, well, this one can't be held liable, so it has to be this fault, like kind of deal. Um, but I also couldn't find too much about that other than just the rough outline of their lawsuit was claiming that there was grossly negligent actions by the police department, which increased the likelihood Gabby would then be harmed. And I see where the judge is coming from, because in the moment, you don't know what's going to happen. And after the fact, now that she was harmed, obviously you want to hold someone responsible. And I do think that the police could have behaved a little differently, but also trying to be in their situation. You only know what you know. So it's that probably was a tough case for the judge to kind of look at, trying to be taking a step back, you know?
Right. The Yeah. I agree. I feel like when I initially watched the body cam footage and Gabby was missing and then confirmed murdered, I did blame the police and I was like I wanted to hold them responsible as well, but I think that they didn't have all the information, and so it's very easy to blame them exclusively, but really the real one to blame is Brian. And the police could not have known that he was going to do what he did. So I don't know that they need to be criminally or legal or financially responsible for that.
Right. And I think it's also the timing of this, it escalated so rapidly, so quickly that
Mhm.
if you look at like I don't, I hate to say this, but like a standard domestic violence case, it's over an extensive period of time where the violence just grows and grows and grows and grows. Brian and Gabby were only together in a relationship for under 2 years.
Yeah.
And this trip was under a month long. Like, it's not like they had been on the road for 3 years and had this long history of violence. I think
Right. I think they
because it jumped so quick, it made people be like, well, the police should have done something right then and there, which I wish they did. But like looking in the moment, they couldn't have known that it was going to escalate so fast like it did.
I think it was the 41st day of their trip that they had the interaction with the Moab police. Um, and I personally, I really think that them being on vacation together and in such an enclosed space and just being stuck together 24 hours a day with nothing to do other than vlog, which he didn't even care about doing. I think that it, that's why it escalated so fast because they
Yeah.
literally could not get away from each other.
Yeah. It's really sad. And I think in these
Oh,
circumstances,
yeah.
everyone wants to blame
Mhm.
everyone, particularly
Right.
because there is no trial. Like they want the responsibility
Mhm.
of a living person. And
Right.
because Brian's remains were found and no trial happened, they're like, okay, well then who can we blame next? Kind of deal. That's how I
Right.
feel. Um,
Right.
which is a weird feeling. Like, let me just shift my
Mhm.
blame because I can't be angry at a dead person. But
Right. So, after the lawsuit against Brian's estate was settled for $3 million, there was also a lawsuit against Christopher and Roberta Laundrie, his parents. And that one I was not able to find the amount that they settled, but I wasn't able to find the amount.
I think that
It
got
was
sealed because
confidential.
I couldn't
Yeah.
find anything.
Yeah. But the premise of that was pretty much that Gabby's family was asserting that Chris and Roberta knew that Brian had confessed to them and that they drew out their pain and suffering and that it was cruel. And that was pretty much the basis of it. That they covered up for him, that they knew, that they didn't tell them.
Hmm. And outside, personally, I totally think they knew. Just my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
But also, I do want to put out there that in cases like this, just because they settled doesn't mean they admitted guilt. So,
Right.
a lot of these cases, it's easier, faster, less expensive to just settle and be like, here's a check. I don't want to deal with this than drawing it all out. So, I personally think they know, but I also think they were just like, I don't want to deal with this. Let's settle, like, and here's a check. I'm done, kind of deal.
Yeah. I read some of the transcripts from the court case against Brian's estate and listened to a podcast talking about that. And it seems like his parents just had a lot of gaps in their memory. They just couldn't quite recall a
Mm.
lot of things. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm sure they didn't admit to anything. Those people are infuriating.
Yeah. Well, here's where all the weird starts coming in, I think, because
Hmm.
they very conveniently forget things. They very conveniently aren't going to cooperate. And we saw this through body cam footage, but pretty much once that van entered Florida again, they very conveniently were quiet. And there's a
Right.
lot of speculation on why that is. Is it because they knew and don't want to incriminate themselves? Is it because they're protecting their son? Is it because there's other factors involved? Like, it's interesting. This is where all the weird theories start popping up.
Yes, and I have been down a dark rabbit hole on TikTok with all different kinds of laundry conspiracy theories. And I was fully believing a lot of them and then tried to verify information, and most of them are probably based on nothing. One of the ones that I hadn't heard of prior to looking into this case again for the podcast that we're doing is that a lot of people think that Brian's parents killed him, and that's why they knew where
Ooh.
his body was.
Meaning,
And that's why
like,
there's no
they
gun.
set him up and killed him, or, like, they did it with him? Like, he was like, "I'm gonna kill
Like they
myself," and they were like, "Well, let us help you then."
well, I guess you could say it either way, but
Mm.
one of the people that I was watching said that that they knew that he was not going to get away with this and that he was going to implicate them. And so they basically killed him in the house and then I guess hung onto his body and then planted it in the woods, which doesn't really make sense because he was extremely decomposed.
Right, and if he's in your
So,
home,
where
there's
would you keep the body?
right.
Yeah.
And have it
So,
decompose that quickly inside of a controlled environment feels wrong. But I could see, like, they went out with him and he was like, "I'm gonna do this." And they're like, "Okay, well, we don't want you to, like, bring us with you. So, like, let's do it together as, like, a family thing." Like,
mm,
which I
I
hate
mean,
saying,
I
but
guess. I definitely think that Brian had a super weird dynamic with his parents, especially his mom.
oh, his mom's
But
dynamic is
I
creepy.
I know. Did we ever talk about the burn after reading letter? I don't
I
really think so.
have that in my note because I don't think we've mentioned it.
I have it in
And
front of me.
I have only like one line. Do you want to give a overview of it? Because that letter is directly related to what my other conspiracy that I think you probably have ties
Oh, sure. I
together.
mean, this one's not that long though. It's not as
Okay, yeah.
wordy as Brian's. And there is a lot of speculation about when this was written. It's not dated. It was found in the laundry house after Brian's death. But there's some contentions. The laundry say that they wrote this or that Roberta wrote this a long time ago. It has nothing to do with Gabby. But who
How
knows? So,
convenient.
well,
I
they can't
forget
remember.
again.
I can't quite recall. I mean, I'm married to a lawyer, so I am familiar with that phrase. I can't recall. Yeah. So the letter is addressed to Brian Christopher Laundrie, which is in itself pretty weird to write to your kid who you have the same last name as. Whatever. In parentheses, it says burn after reading. And then the letter says, I just want you to remember I will always love you, and I know you will always love me. You are my boy. Nothing can make me stop loving you. Nothing will, or if you're in jail, I will bake a cake with a file in it. If you need to dispose of a body, I will show up with a shovel and garbage bags. If you fly to the moon, I will be watching the skies for your re-entry. If you say you hate my guts, I'll get new guts. Remember that love is a verb, not a noun. It's not a thing, it's not words, it is actions. Watch people's actions to know if they love you, not their words. Therefore, I am certain that neither death nor life, nor angels, nor the ruling spirits, nor things present, nor things to come, nor powers from above, nor powers from below. Nothing in the entire created world can separate our love. Neither hostile powers, nor messengers of heaven, nor monarchs of earth. Nothing has the power to separate us. Romans 8:38. Nothing can separate us, not hatred, not hunger, not homelessness, not threats, not even sin. Not the thinkable or unthinkable can get between us. Not time, not miles and miles and miles.
It sounds like a
And
letter you should be
that's where it
writing to,
ends.
like, your husband at war. Like
Like a lover.
yeah, like, not your son. And the quote that I had written down was basically the same of baking him a cake with a file in it or bringing the
Mhm.
shovel to dispose of the body. So, granted, it's not like she wasn't buried, so it's not specific per se. Um,
Mhm.
but creepy relationship. And
Very, very creepy.
I want to bring up that she writes a letter like this, regardless on when she wrote it, right? It doesn't matter. There is
Hmm.
a level of love and obsession over her son that is just there. You're telling me that a mother who loves her son that much doesn't have a funeral or any kind of service for her child?
I know. I thought that was so bizarre. There was no funeral.
No funeral, no cremation on record, no memorial, no nothing. Absolutely nothing. Granted, you don't have
Hmm.
to. He did a really terrible thing. Maybe they just wanted to like try to brush it away, but nothing. If you're willing to do all that for your son, you ain't going to celebrate him.
I mean, I guess it's possible that the family had an extremely private memorial where it was just immediate family and it never got leaked to the media. I find that a little hard to believe because they were under such a microscope. There are plenty of cases, especially with, I'm thinking of some school shooters, that they did not have funerals after they, had self-inflicted gunshot wounds after committing atrocities, that where they didn't have funerals because people will protest them, people will show up, and it will not be well received at all.
Right.
So, and I do think that would have happened in this case. There was already protesters at the laundry house like
Oh,
every day.
100%. I'm not denying that that would be the case. But what I do think is weird is in those examples that you're talking about, the parents aren't proud of their son. Their parents
Mm,
aren't trying to protect them from their actions. A lot of them are like, I'm ashamed of his behavior. Like, I can't believe, like, a lot of them don't sit
that's
there.
true. That's a good point.
Versus this mother is like, she takes a phone call right after he murders his fiance girlfriend. She houses him during the whole thing, keeps him away from the police. Like, eh, listen, I don't know about you, but most parents I know, if I showed up at my mother's house, I was like, hey, I'm wanted for murder. The police are here to talk to me. I don't want to talk to them. She'd open the door and be like, she's right there. Like, she'd be
It's
like, you're on your
interesting.
own. Talk to the police. If you're not guilty, you have nothing to hide. If you are guilty, you deserve what's coming for you. Like,
I know a lot of people that have watched this docuseries recently, and a lot of them have brought up how they feel their own parents would react in the situation, and or how they would feel about their own children if their child was Brian in the situation and what they would do. Like, would they cover up for him? Would they get him a lawyer right away? Would they, would their parents turn on them and go to the police? And I think that it's hard to know until you're in that
oh,
situation,
100%.
but
Yeah, absolutely.
I do not think that my parents would have, because I think that they, if especially if they knew that I killed someone, they I think, I mean, this has not happened yet, but I think that they would want me to be accountable for that. I don't think that they would think it was okay for me not to have any consequences. I think maybe they would help me pay for
Right.
defense and that they would try to
Sure.
advocate for me and they'd put money on my books when I was in, I hope, but like I mean, this is my parents though, and my
Right.
parents also have never written me a letter like that where they were like,
Yeah,
"Oh, well,
creepy
we'd
love
cover it
letter.
up for you." Like, if she wrote that letter years ago, it's actually kinda worse and also explains why he called her right
Yeah.
away after he killed his girlfriend. Because like, "Oh, well, my mom will understand.
I think
She
she
actually
definitely
already told me
did.
about this."
Yeah, I think she did it a while ago and it was like just creepy. Because here's the flip
Yeah.
side. If I was the victim and then I snapped and killed my fiance, I think
Mhm.
the parents would handle it differently. Like I could see a parent being more protective of like, okay, like yes, she did this, but like there's a reason and let me explain. Versus
Sure.
like I'm going to help them because they endured all this stuff and finally they just couldn't take it anymore and the crime of passion kind of defense. Um
Well,
not
reading Brian's
exactly, but
suicide note, though, he had a lot of explanations and justifications for what happened.
mhm.
And I wouldn't be surprised if that's what he was trying to. I would be surprised if he called his parents and said, "I killed Gabby. It's 100% my fault."
Oh, yeah. He doesn't seem like someone who's gonna take accountability for anything.
No, not at any point. Not at any point.
But, yeah, it feels weird to me. So then I also went down a TikTok rabbit hole. The other side of it is, okay, either the parents did it, or what if it's not him?
Oh, I know. This is the big one.
And this is
The big one.
where I think the fact that she didn't have a funeral and stuff, like, that supported it for me is,
Mhm.
what if he's actually alive and this was someone else that they found? And they happened to just come across it, or they had been planning it for a while, or whatever the case was. But there is a theory that Brian's alive.
Yes, and I all last week believed that theory because I saw an extremely viral, extremely popular TikTok video where someone was saying that Brian's body was only identified by his teeth, by dental records, and that the dentist identifying him is his uncle, and that it's all in the family. And if
Mm.
that's the case, then, you know, maybe they would cover up for him. Maybe this is some hitchhiker, some homeless person that they abducted and murdered and skeletonized and ditched in the woods. And Brian is off in another country. There's a lot of speculation that he got to the Bahamas or that he is in Italy, that he got on a boat. You can very easily get to the Caribbean islands from Florida
Mhm.
and you wouldn't need to fly, which it's much harder to do when you're a fugitive. But
Right. And
I
I agree. I
yeah.
kinda am leaning towards it because then so you have all that, right? You have the parents that have settled outside of court, which means they never had to get a lengthy disposition. They never had to sit in front of a judge and answer questions or be held in contempt. So it keeps them from having to explain things that they might not want to explain. Um, the sister has now come out and been like, listen, I've had no contact or virtually no contact for the last 2 years with my parents. Like the sister's
Yeah.
completely cut out of their life altogether. So
Which
trying to
could be because
keep
Brian's alive and they're hiding him, for
trying to
sure.
keep that
That could
circle
be.
closed.
So I loved this theory, but I did try to debunk it, and I'm not the only one trying to do that because there are other articles and stuff debunking it. And the most convincing, compelling evidence I've found is that his autopsy, there's multiple doctors listed on it, and the office that did it said that none of them are related to Brian Laundrie. And he was not only just identified by dental records, he was identified by DNA from a tooth and from a bone. And the FBI has put out multiple reports saying that he has been DNA confirmed that it's him.
Yeah.
So, unless he had an identical twin stashed in the basement or something, it seems unlikely.
I agree it's unlikely, but I still kind of like it. I don't know.
I do too.
I like the idea. No, I don't like the idea, but I'm partial to the idea. Maybe is a better wording. Uh the one theory of so Brian's mom got that phone call, right? And then got in the car and then met him halfway or some middle
Mm,
point and they switched. And it would be
yeah,
very easy for someone to disappear in a lot of these national parks that are hundreds of thousands of acres that you can just go out and camp and be very easy to
right.
disappear for a while. And she brought back the van, parked it because there's no footage other than like I think some debit card receipts. There's no footage of him at a gas station in Florida. Like
Yeah.
there's
There's
no
footage of the car, but there's
right
no footage that you can see him in.
of
So
him.
I agree, and I have thought about that a bunch because there doesn't seem to be a lot of confirmed sightings of him in Florida. He pretty much stayed in the house. Like he did go camping with Cassie and his parents, but that's according to Cassie and his parents.
Right.
And I didn't see any pictures or videos of that. Maybe they exist and I just didn't find them, but to me, I would not have been I was convinced a little bit by the DNA. I do like the idea though that maybe not like it, but it's more interesting to think that
Yeah.
Brian is like still out there on the run and that he could possibly still be caught and captured. But I think that if there was really a real possibility of that, Gabby's parents would be screaming that from the rooftops. I think they're convinced that Brian's dead, and that's also pretty convincing to me.
Oh, absolutely. I agree that it's unlikely, but I think
Mhm.
of the conspiracies, I lean towards he's alive than his parents murdered him personally.
Yeah, I don't really think they murdered him. I do think they knew exactly where his body was gonna be, and it makes me think that maybe he had discussed his
His
plan.
plan.
Like, maybe he was like, I'm not trying to spend the rest of my life in prison for this, honestly. Like, it's just not even worth it. I'm guilty. I'm gonna be convicted. I'm not going to prison. This is what I'm gonna do. If you wanna retrieve my body, this is where it's gonna be."
Yeah, because it was a popular place that apparently he liked to go, so it makes sense.
I mean, they found it so quickly. It makes that, to me, is the most unbelievable part, that they just stumbled upon his book bag and his bones.
Yeah. Yeah, the whole thing feels odd for sure.
Very odd. And I think it's very, very, very odd that his parents still live in that house.
Really, the
If that's not
house.
a reason to move, yeah. They have a
Mm.
lot of more shrubs now, but they still live in their house. And people hate them. They
Absolutely.
are
But then you have
monsters.
that final like that
Like,
financial aspect of like up and moving is not exactly
mhm.
always an option for people,
Well,
particularly
also, people may not wanna buy the house because
right.
of this.
And we don't know what their financial situation was, and they did drop $25,000 just to retain an attorney, let alone their own legal fees and all of
Right, and
that.
whatever they
So,
settled for.
right. So, even if they wanted to move, they might not be in the position to do so. But also, if
Yeah, and
they're
I would
hiding
imagine,
out their son in the house, how are they gonna get him out?
well, true, if Brian's there, then they're never gonna sell that house, and also, he's gonna have to just stay inside all the time, which I find hard to believe as someone who is, like, as annoyingly outdoorsy as he was.
Mhm.
I don't think he could do that. I also don't really think he could have survived living, like, out in the woods long term. It doesn't seem like he was really sustainably able to do that. Seems like he had to hitchhike, he had to, like,
Well, he tried to make a
scum off a
fire and
girlfriend.
failed. Like,
Yeah, it's like, you're not
in
really a
his
good
own
camper, man.
story, like, his own
Yeah.
story, he failed to make a fire. You would think he'd be like, "I'm this great outdoors man. Look at this fire. Hear me roar."
Yeah. I mean, he just would tell on himself constantly, and he thought that he was making himself sound better, and he never really did.
Yeah, it was definitely weird. Well, that was most of kind of all the aftermath. Do you have any additional thoughts about the repercussions, the actions taken by either family after the case?
Well, not well, I don't know. I feel like I've covered, like, mostly my thoughts and feelings on the parents, but I do think it's worth mentioning that there were 6 other people found because of the searches for Gabby, people that were missing, that their bodies were found because of all of these search efforts, and I think, A, it's really sad that not everyone has family to advocate for them the way that Gabby's did,
Mhm.
but also that at least hopefully that brought closure to some people and that people could be laid to rest, because I mean, it's horrifying to me to think of just a body decomposing in the woods and
Oh, yeah.
never getting not that a burial changes anything necessarily, but it seems much more humane, I guess.
Yeah, and just closure for the people around you. I totally agree.
Mhm. Yeah.
I think people forget that these areas are so densely packed that this terrain is not somewhere like you're just not walking down the side. It's like they're not it's the wilderness, a lot of it. A lot of it is
Mhm.
raw, it's not trailed. It's easy to get lost or if you get hurt or in the bad cases, a great place to hide a body. Um
Right.
and I agree that these families hopefully get something because of the efforts that the Petito family put in. Because not everyone has those resources. Not everyone has that family dynamic. Not everyone has the ability to be so loud that
Right.
gets that attention, that gets those cases, that gets that action taken. Because that
Yeah.
takes financial means, it takes teamwork, it takes support, it takes a lot to time, effort, like, um
Definitely. It's a lot of resources that a lot of people just don't even know how to access. And also because of the way that her family presents and how relatable they are and how aspirational they are in some ways, it is such a good story. And not everyone has a great story to tell.
Right.
And not everyone's going to be like this adorable little 22-year-old white blonde girl who got savagely murdered and left in the woods by her disgusting boyfriend,
Yeah.
fiance, sorry. Um, so I think that, and especially Gabby's dad, his whole platform now is advocating for missing people who didn't get as much attention as Gabby.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of factors that go into that, but I think that it's really incredible that he's still advocating for missing persons and for abused women. I think again, this is something that Gabby would be very proud of.
Yeah, absolutely. And the
How about you?
more yeah, I think you kinda
Final
hit
thoughts?
the nail on the
Yeah.
head with the final thought. I was just say the
Oh,
more
thank you.
exposure you get to cases like this and the more I don't wanna say normalized because it's a horrible thing that I wish didn't happen, but the
Right.
more normalized it feels that if you're in these circumstances, you're not alone. I think that's a really big thing that they're trying to do is abusers really like to isolate people. Look at Brian. He literally took her
Yeah.
into the middle of the woods alone.
Yeah.
And I think that's an extreme option, but a lot of people just get really isolated and they feel alone. And the efforts that are being done to give people resources, but also tell them that they're not alone and it can get better is I think it's really good. So hopefully positive things happen.
For sure. It shows that like love still wins, you know? Like love is still
Yeah.
more important and better, bigger than hate. Um and I feel like we could leave it there. And I really enjoyed the docu-series, and I really enjoyed all the TikTok rabbit holes. This was a sad case, but there were a lot of uplifting moments as well.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend it for people who haven't listened to it or watched it. I think it was
Mhm.
really well done. I agree.
Okay. Well, it's been a pleasure as always.
Till next time.
Bye, Crystal.
Bye.